Welcome to this series of light reading conversations on 5G orchestration. Terry Sweeney here with Light Reading. Joining me now is Susan White, who's head of strategy and portfolio marketing with Netcracker. Susan, thanks for joining us today for this conversation.
I'm happy to be here.
So we're talking about 5G orchestration, and with 5G being quite widely deployed now, I'm curious from your view what value 5G orchestration will bring to the market on top of the platform.
Exactly. So the value of 5G orchestration is actually quite simple. It's all about automation. And, we really need automation, I think, for three key reasons. I mean, first of all, there's so many technology advancements. I mean, if we just look at what's happening in the RAN, for example, with the move towards Open RAN, much more disaggregation, a lot of software, a lot of new vendors in that area. We've got the 5G radio units with massive MIMO, and also service providers are starting to deploy the 5G core as well. So a lot of technology advancements, and of course we want to add slicing into all of that. In addition, we're starting to see a lot more service providers want to deploy on hyperscaler infrastructure. And that's something in Netcracker we've been involved in some time, moving the BSS OSS to the hyperscaler platforms. But we're starting to see that for the network workloads as well. And that means you're really operating in quite a complex, hybrid environment. So that's the second key thing. But ultimately, with all this technology, it's all about being able to do new things, how we can add more innovation on top of the 5G network. And that comes with being able to do things like, on-demand services, on-demand slices, fix upgrades really quickly with, DevOps processes, and do things like on-demand slicing. So ultimately, we cannot do any of those things unless we start to bring really high levels of automation into the operations environment.
It seems like what you're describing is just an amazing amount of flexibility, underpinned by integration on a scale we haven't really seen before. Is that accurate?
Oh, the integration is absolutely huge. I mean, that's why it's incredibly important, for example, for everybody in that ecosystem to work with like open APIs. That's something that's really important. And, we've got the TM Forum APIs, we've got MEF, we've got 3GPP, we've got the overrun alliance, we've got many bodies involved. But, we all have to conform to these APIs to make it work. Also, the sort of use cases and service models we need to align on as well. And I think what's important there and what we're seeing is really how we work together more in the industry to make that happen. We work with our parent company, NEC, for example. They have a lot of integration centers, and they're a system integrator in a lot of these 5G networks. And that means we get exposure to many partners. We're working with everybody on doing that integration. And also, if we look at initiatives that are happening with like MEF POCs, we did a great proof of concept with MEF recently, and Microsoft and NTT Comms, and how you orchestrate across multi-cloud platforms, and TM Forum and the Catalyst. We've been very involved in them and doing sort of, different slice use cases. So I think that's going to be incredibly important, because this integration is complex, but it's solvable if we all work as an ecosystem.
I dare say. Talk, if you will, about Netcracker's approach with 5G orchestration to drive this level of automation that you're describing.
Yeah, so I think maybe we can start with what is 5G orchestration, because it's not one thing. It's not a product. It's not a function. So there's many different capabilities that come into play for 5G orchestration, and it impacts the whole network. So, for example, you need to orchestrate cloud native workloads for the 5G core, but for the G Node Bs as well. You need to bring in slice management functions, and they need to be, slices in the transport network, in the RAN network, in the core network, and across the end-to-end as well. You need to even bring in like the new Mech applications that are coming out. You need to be able to orchestrate those on an end-to-end basis. So a lot of capabilities basically are in that. So what we're doing is we're coupling that with some new OSS functions we have, like active resource inventory. You've got to know what's in your network, or else you can't automate, and that has to be real time. And also things like the new RIC. We launched a non-real-time RIC last year to be able to optimize in the RAN. You have to automate that, and also couple it with like AI and ML functions, a big investment we've had in Netcracker. So if you put all those together, what we're doing is bringing them together per domain. So for the RAN domain, for the transport domain, for the core, and making each of these self-sufficient. So not big, monolithic sort of engine anymore for automation, but automate each of these domains and allow them to do what they need to do without having to go to any other layers. So that's a key thing we're doing, everything from the design through to the deployment, through to the optimization, through to the assurance. And we'll do that from the RAN all the way to the core, to the transport, and then bring that on an end-to-end basis. So this domain approach will really bring that flexibility that you need and help you, get to those on-demand services, basically.
What are some of the challenges that you and your customers are facing? And tell us a bit about how you're solving those. So
I think, one of the main challenges in automation is basically how you execute it. So in the past, when you have a service order, you would have some processes and a lot of detailed IT engineers that will work out a workflow for that to make it happen. So there'd be some automation, but we've completely changed that now. The industry is moving to a new model. It's called intent-based orchestration. And that means all you need to do is specify that intent. I want to open a new smart office. And then your orchestration engine has to do the magic and automatically make all that happen. But obviously there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. So that's a key challenge. And what we've been doing is focusing on two areas there to make that happen. One is building service models. So a service model is, defines everything you need for that service to work. But if you define the model in too much detail, it's too complex. It'll take too long, and you can't know everything that might happen in the network if anything goes wrong or if an event happens somewhere. You just can't know everything. But if you make the model too light, you need lots of manual inputs, so you don't benefit either. So you have to get that balance right. So we're building these dynamic service models to give enough flexibility, but avoid manual inputs. And then on the other hand, we couple that with how you execute it. So we've really invested heavily on that part. We've got some really clever stuff in our orchestration engine that allows you to do that. This scalable choreography, we call it. And I think those two pieces are basically a bit of our secret sauce that allows you to really execute that intent. And that's what we're doing. We're helping service providers move to that model. But it's not easy.
Susan, for customers who are starting to use 5G orchestration, talk about some of the use cases that you're seeing customers deploy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great use cases. We've been working on so many in different industries for a while, and I think service providers are obviously figuring out their business strategy for each one, and some of them are tackling the manufacturing first, some are tackling other industries first, but one of the ones that we've actually deployed recently was quite interesting. It was in the retail sector, and a service provider was offering a managed 5G service, so it's a private 5G service, to this retail outlet. And their goal was really to use 5G technology to sort of understand and track and analyze the customer behavior to be able to optimize the experience in the store. So they installed 5G cameras and sort of video analytics engine and an IoT gateway, and our role was really to orchestrate that, because some functions are on the premise, like the 5G core and the analytics applications, which is like a Mech application, and other functions were back in the network as well. So we needed to orchestrate that end to end. So that's something that we've just deployed, which is interesting. I think in another one in the RAN, for example, there's a lot of activity going in the RAN right now, obviously, as it's moving to an open RAN environment. And with the non-real-time RIC, this gives you the opportunity to start to really tune that RAN network in many different ways. So we've been building use cases with service providers over the last year, for example, how you can really optimize the massive MIMO for coverage and capacity as people move from their, say, their office buildings in the day. Well, maybe not since COVID times, but perhaps post-COVID times that will be useful. So they move from their office buildings and into the, into the public transport, and you want to really optimize and get the best coverage for them at all times. Another one we did, it was very much important for the sort of the carbon strategy, if you like, that the targets that many service providers have, because it was how you can reduce the power of these massive MIMO units when there wasn't much usage on the network, but without impacting the throughput for any user. So there's quite some clever things going on there that would really help to sort of minimize the power at certain times. So that's been really interesting. And then another one we worked on very recently was with AWS and our parent company NEC to look at temporary sports events and simulate how we can offer that in a sort of a very short time frame, because these event companies, they take months and months of preparation, huge IT infrastructure that's needed, and then it's all gone. So this is a classic example where we could, put a sort of 5G core or the UPF part of the 5G core really close to the event and spin that up very quickly on something like an AWS Outposts, add in the applications that they would use to sort of monitor the cars, etc., and get all the masses of analytics they need in the network. And then we orchestrate all that with some back-end applications that are not real time at all. So these types of capabilities were really interesting. And of course, as we get the 5G core in and we sort of build more of these 5G orchestration functions, we're going to see a lot more innovation happening and the ability to do a lot more on top of the 5G network than we can do today.
Great context for 5G orchestration, Susan. Really appreciate you joining us for this conversation today.
Great, thank you.
We've been talking with Susan White with Netcracker. This has been Terry Sweeney for Light Reading. Thanks for joining us for this series of conversations around 5G orchestration. See you next time.